Government.
Welcome to the thrilling world of Security Squawk, where we explore cybersecurity. Guiding you through online threats, we'll aid you in understanding safety protocols and trends. Meet our gurus, Brian from Exact IT, Reginald from Arc Solvers, and Randy from Tech Rescue. Together, we'll delve into current events and hot cybersecurity topics, helping you comprehend their impact. Stay informed, stay secure. Security Squawk, the business of cybersecurity. Buckle up, let's dive in.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to this week's edition of the Security Squawk podcast. I'm your co-host, Brian, here with Andre and Randy. How are you gentlemen doing today?
All right. Happy election day.
Happy election day.
Doing great over here as well.
I don't see either of you with your stickers on.
Oh, I early voted, man, like 2 weeks ago.
Oh my God, you cheated?
You know, that's a conversation for a whole other thing. So I'm just going along with what's legal.
All right. So welcome to the podcast that keeps you up to date on the latest cybersecurity threats, trends, and solutions. In this episode, we're going to be exploring a range of topics from a surge in ransomware attacks to vulnerabilities in popular devices in a lot of homes and businesses, in my opinion. The targeting of public institutions and what's up with that. And we're going to break down complex security issues, try to simplify them for you, give you expert insight, and provide actionable advice to help you protect yourself from these cyber criminals and these cyber threats. So whether you're a cyber professional, a business leader, someone just interested in staying safe online, this podcast has something for you. And in return for this content that we put out for free, and we don't annoy you or bore you with commercials, we ask that you just help us promote this podcast by doing simple things wherever you're consuming this, by sharing it, liking it, leaving a rating, leaving a 5-star review on a podcasting platform, or just sharing it out on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever you might be seeing us right now. We appreciate the support. So guys, we're going to talk about the alarming rise in ransomware and the severity of its impact on businesses to start off the show here. And we have a couple interesting articles, but one that I wanted to bring up is from this Forbes article that we found from Forbes Council, which I typically don't like to bring up Forbes Council articles because they're typically written by somebody in the business. It's not, I guess, objective by an actual reporter, if that's how you still think of things today. It's a paid part of Forbes magazine that you pay to be part of. But a lot of times interesting information can be brought out in these articles, and this is one of those. And the article goes into the severity of ransomware attacks. And we've been talking about this a lot, saying like, yes, the number of attacks are down, but the severity and the damage that it's causing, both the event itself and then the aftermath, is just been strikingly, the numbers are strikingly higher and greater than they've ever been. And that shows with the first half of 2024, with this report saying a 68% spike in the average loss amount for a business who deals with an event. And the trend highlights the evolving nature of cyber threats and the need for robust cybersecurity measures. So the average ransomware loss, according to this article, guys, is right around $353,000. Business email compromise is still the leading cyber event. And it's interesting to me because I literally saw an article while I was doing research for the show that said ransomware was the number one cyber threat to businesses. And I'm like, it said ransomware still is the biggest threat to businesses. I don't think that that's ever been the case. And I don't think that's the case today. I think business email compromise is a bigger problem for businesses. And funds transfer fraud actually shows a decline in frequency and severity. So that's good. People are getting smarter around the funds transfer for fraud piece, but there's a lot more ways that cyber criminals are using business email compromise other than just moving money around. We'll talk about that. So what do you guys think are the factors that are contributing to the increased severity of ransomware attacks? Like what is behind kind of like the shift that we've been talking about for probably about almost a year now, it feels like, where we know we're not going to see as many cyber or ransomware events, small scale ones, because the cyber criminals basically decided we're only going after a business if it's going to bring in X amount of dollars, right? For the majority of ransomware groups, I think that's where things are at. There's obviously small timers out there trying to make a buck and doing things on the low end of the cyber criminal side of things. But what do you guys think is contributing to the increased severity of these ransomware attacks? I've heard people say things like law enforcement pressure has caused them to do less but ask for more or get more. But what are your thoughts on this?
You have to start, I say it all the time, you have to start with the phrase I always use is follow the money, because the criminals are not in it because they want to upset you. They're not in it. Well, there may be a nation state or whatever. The majority of the criminals, though, they're in it to make money. And so you follow the money. If so, you get to a place where it's a little bit harder to make money off the business email compromises, you're going to see the ransomware attacks go up. So why is there a rise in ransomware attacks? Because that's where the money is. And so when the money's there, they're going to put the time, the resources, the geeks who know how to hack, they're going to put all that towards this effort so they can make money from it. So that's what I would say.
And then you have the mentality of business owners that they're never going to come after me. Why do they care? I'm too small. And they're going to just go after the bigger companies.
Yep, I'm laughing because I hear that all the time. It's sad how much we hear that, in our line of work. Well, it'll never happen to me. I'm too small to get hacked. I'm just not going to worry about it. It's one of those things, man. Doesn't matter till it does, and then it does. It really does.
I just had we have clients that are on our full cybersecurity, package. And then we have clients from the old days that we've kept, but they've signed, risk waivers saying that if they get hacked, it's not on us. And they got hacked. They got a business email compromise. Their emails basically got hacked. And our protocol is automatically to, block all sign-ins, change the password. And we gave them a remediation proposal to do the investigation and to do all of that jazz. And they were like, no, just reset the password and just, we're fine. Just reset the password and unblock the access. So sometimes they don't even care.
Mm-hmm.
So I just spoke a little bit about the Forbes article. The Forbes article was actually about a chief marketing officer's experience during a ransomware attack. And we're going to weave that into this conversation a little bit because I think it lends itself to the discussion about ransomware attacks and just attacks increasing and the effects of them, the negative effects of them increasing as we move here into 2025 here. And that trend is only going to keep going in the direction we see it going, which is less events, bigger payouts. That's really where things are at right now. So this article from this chief marketing officer's experience during a ransomware attack. Now, obviously, not a technology person, right? But they are in the C-suite. And you would think that this person's probably responsible for some of the PR and the customer-facing dealings that they would have to deal with through an event like this. And here are some of the things that I pulled out of the article that this CMO kind of pointed out as lessons learned in this event. And one of the things that was highlighted was the importance of preparation, and saying that having a well-defined incident response plan is crucial, and that they felt like the company's preparedness allowed them to respond quickly and effectively. And I think like that's an important point, guys, because I think this is probably where most businesses are lacking, where probably the biggest gap is. I talked last week on the podcast about the gap between what the total addressable market is for cybersecurity and what businesses are actually spending on cybersecurity. There's a massive gap there. And I think like if you start to slice and dice where they're spending, where they're not spending, preparing for an incident probably has to rank up there as one of the areas that they're not really investing heavily in yet. Do you guys agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Sure.
And then, you know, obviously the marketing person is going to take an angle of communication. So they're saying transparent and timely communication with stakeholders, including customers, partners, employees, is essential during crisis. How many times have we highlighted cyber attacks, guys, on the show where communication was just not good with customers? We saw that, I think, with the Patelco Credit Union cyber attack, and, you know, with the Crown Equipment cyber attack, where the employees weren't really being told, you know, I don't think the company was necessarily being forthright with the employees, especially early on. So clear communication with everybody, kind of, what do you think that does for a business if they're able to communicate clearly and effectively through whatever event they're dealing with?
Well, for one, the employee morale will hopefully stay up, you know, and it's going to be more of a, hey guys, we're in the wartime and let's stick together. We're in this together, rather than saying, hey, sorry, our bank accounts are locked, or we have no internet, figure out payroll and go to the unemployment line. That's the first thing. And then on the opposite side, you have with the clients, because if the clients are in the dark and they are waiting for the service or the product that you're offering, again, there's that empathy that they can say, wow, this is horrible that company X got hacked. Let's not go to our competitors. Let's give them a chance because they're great, but they've communicated with us. But if I can't reach out to you for a whole week and I'm not sure if it's going to be another week or not, well, I got to move on.
Yeah, you got to keep in mind that it's eventually going to happen to everybody. And so if you're like sending your employees to the county unemployment line, not putting out a public statement, you know, people being able to search on Reddit to find out what's going on with your company, not official, you're going to get moved on from. So your customers are going to go somewhere else because they're like, wow, these guys really don't have it together. But if you can come out with a communication plan at least once a day, you're letting everybody know where you're at, you're letting your employees know where you're at, and you're moving forward, then people are going to see, okay, this is a blip. It's going to happen to everybody eventually. This company's handling it well. And even though this is a bad thing, I'd rather stay involved with this company than switch providers and go to another vendor. And we could probably sit here for the next 30 minutes and think of vendors that have handled it wrongly. I know people in the payroll space that are still banking on some bad decisions that payroll companies made over the last 2 years. I'm not going to name any names, but bad decisions they made, the people that are currently still banking off of that because they made those bad decisions, and there's ill will now among their customers. And so the company that got hacked, their customers are easy targets for the competitors to steal them away just because of the malware that happened. Had a huge discussion about it at a party just a couple of weeks ago with 2 or 3 different payroll vendors, and wow, what I learned. So I guess just to go off the back of what Andre was saying, communicate regularly. You know, you got to reach out to your lawyer and your insurance company right away, get that message out there, and keep people informed as to what's going on, be on top of it, and let people know, yeah, this is a crisis, but also we can deal with it. We're the right company to be with because we can deal with a crisis. So anyway.
And the person that's speaking on it, like we saw with Columbus, Ohio, yes, the mayor is usually the figurehead of the city, but if you don't know the difference between, a router and a switch, and you know nothing about technology, maybe it would be just good to go on the podium and say, look, we had a cyber attack. I'm now going to introduce John Doe, and he's going to kind of answer all the questions and fill everybody in. But don't try to be the face of things when you just don't know what you're talking about, and you're going to make it even worse because you think you're sounding really smart. And when we're reading these articles and watching the news, we're like, this guy has no idea what he's talking about.
Such a great point. I don't have any comment to add, but wow, such a great point.
Sorry, guys, I had some audio issues going on here. So the rest of the article goes on to talk about some high-level things, and I'll just touch on them. If you guys want to provide commentary on any of these, let me know, and then I'll let you talk. And then we'll go back to kind of some of the stats out of the Insurance Journal article that has the ransomware stats. So one of the other things that the CMO pointed out was leadership's role and their ability to be strong, remain calm, focused, provide clear direction, but also the ability for your team to what they term as cross-functional collaboration, meaning different departments, especially IT, legal, and the communication team working together to get through that event. Really advises on a good customer-centric approach, prioritizing customer needs and maintaining open lines. I think that touches on what you guys talked about. Balancing transparency and legal considerations. You don't want to run out there and say something that's going to, come back to bite you later on, as Columbus is probably going to learn here in the future. And then continuous learning, always understanding that cybersecurity requires ongoing education. It requires a lot of education because things change quickly and often, and your employees need to know not only the threats, but the best practices around those threats. That's why once a year, twice a year training isn't good enough when it comes to this stuff. And although it makes you feel good and you're like, yep, we're doing this, it's not enough. Things change too much too quickly. The ability to adapt and be resilient, regardless of the situation, to maintain business continuity, post-incident analysis, and long-term impact on the company culture, because the experience, she feels fostered a stronger security-conscious culture within the organization. So, guys, these are all things. This person just literally went through a litany of things that we talk about on this channel constantly, like how you need to approach, your security before an attack, what you need to do during an attack, and then what happened. It's amazing to me that companies need to go through an event to figure all this stuff out, like to realize, like, these are all the things you need to do. This woman listed 10 things, and I would say within those 10 things, you could probably divide some of those things up into like 3 or 4 more things, right? So there's probably, in this article, there's probably like 20 things that this chief marketing officer laid out for businesses that their company now realizes, since they've been through an event, that they have to do that clearly they weren't doing before the event. Like, literally, she gives you a list in this article, which is pretty cool. You guys see anything else there you want to discuss? All good?
Yep, all good on my side.
All right.
Do we happen to know which company it was?
Nope.
No? Okay.
So some of the other things that came out of the article I mentioned at the top of the podcast, guys, with this ransomware information or study that's been put out by the Insurance Journal, is that the frequency of ransomware is decreasing, but obviously the amounts that are being paid out have increased, and that's for multiple reasons. Business email compromise is the leading cybersecurity event, and that has increased by 4%, and that is 1/3 of all insurance claims for cyber insurance claims are for business email compromise. Funds transfer fraud saw a small decrease, of 2% and a 15% decrease in severity, with the average loss of about 218,000. Big issue for businesses that the Insurance Journal has highlighted for this year's report is the impact of exposed login panels, meaning businesses that are using web accessible applications are 3 times more likely to experience a claim. Yowza. Meaning if you have something exposed to the internet, like an M365 or a custom built website with a database on the back end, you have a little login there. If you have PHI, PII, we've seen all kinds of different things on the other sides of these logins. People keep things inside their 365 that is protected information, and they don't do a good job of protecting their M365 accounts. This is kind of what that's talking about. Is there anything I missed there, guys?
Well, I would say probably most of these logins are going to be on a website. Obviously, right. Most websites are going to be WordPress.
Well, it doesn't have to be a website. It's just saying web accessible applications. So that could be a Synology. That could be a firewall.
True that.
It could be anything that you can pull up in a web browser and start banging away on a login.
And that's where I was going to go with that is you don't want to allow someone to just sit there and log in for the rest of eternity, because they're going to go through all the known passwords in, a matter of days, if not hours, and probably would get in just off of that, but then they're going to start doing random passwords and they'll just keep trying. I've seen Chinese servers hack away at exposed control, exposed logins like this, specifically Exchange, to the tune of like 20 to 40,000 a day. Like if they're just left to themselves. So you got to implement things like, hey, if you fail after 5 logins, lock them out for 12 hours or 24 hours or 30 minutes or whatever, but just slow them down. But yeah, I can see why this is a big deal and why more attacks happen because of this.
So the report also pointed out large-scale attacks like the ones on Change Healthcare and CDK Global also impacted the insurance industry, impacting known as third-party business disruption. That is something that is showing up in these reports now, which is interesting because it's kind of the first time we've seen third-party disruptions start to be reported on and saying that it's causing a significant loss in the insurance industry. And then revenue-based impacts, claims for severity for businesses with 100 million or more in revenue rose by 140% to an average loss of 307,000. Again, that's just for the attack. There's no way they're getting out of this. I mean, we've seen class action lawsuits in the millions. So that's, literally this is just like talking about getting you through like the event and the ransomware payment. It's not considering recovery costs. Businesses with 25 to 100 million saw a 23% increase, an average of $129,000 loss, while those under 25 million experienced a 4% decrease to 73,000 average loss. So they're going after the bigger businesses, but that doesn't mean if your business is under 25 million, you don't have to worry about hackers coming after you. That's kind of, they might be asking for a little bit less money from that end of the market, but that's all that story really tells. 4% decrease. Who knows?
They're just not reporting
it. Report it, and if you go by my numbers on the dark web from my threat intelligence team, this stuff ain't down at all.
Right.
Anywhere.
Right.
It's just not being reported or the claims aren't being filed. This is an insurance industry follow on report, like here's what's going on. This is lagging data, right? This isn't leading data. When I look on the dark web, that's a leading indicator, not a lagging indicator. Yep. This is a lagging indicator. And, you get a choice whether you want to file a claim or not. you don't get a choice whether you're on the dark web or not. Well, you do, but you're not really in control if you're not negotiating. Overall claims severity increase, and ransomware drove a 14% increase in overall claims. Not a good story for the insurance industry when they're paying out 20% more than they were last year. That's why we're seeing these premiums increase at a rate of 30, 40, 50% a year, because when your profit is being chewed up by the tune of 14, 15%, 16, 20% a year, you're going to raise costs.
Mm-hmm.
So anything else out of that article you guys want to take a look at, or are we good?
No, we're good.
All right, I'm going to move into the 3 or 4 ransomware events that we have going on, guys. One of those is I'm actually going to jump into this Memorial Health one. So this Memorial Hospital and Manor is dealing with a ransomware attack. Let me try to get some notes on this. The ransomware attack occurred on October 11th, 2024, significantly impacting the hospital's IT systems. This is a healthcare facility in Bainbridge, Georgia, and the hospital immediately initiated its incident response protocols and worked with cybersecurity experts to contain the attack and restore systems. Despite the challenges, patient care continued with minimal disruption. And while the investigation is ongoing, there is concern that patient data may have been accessed or exfiltrated during the attack. Memorial Hospital and Manor have committed to notifying patients of their personal information was compromised as a result of the attack, and the hospital is reviewing its cybersecurity measures and plans to implement additional safeguard to prevent future incidents.
Tell that to the nurses.
That's it, guys.
I said, tell that to the nurses. Minimal interruption when you're having to now go manual on everything.
Yes. That is definitely true.
But that goes back to the communication, right? Because if you're now in the hot seat of, like, you're the nurse, you're the one dealing with this whole effect, and now you're reading newspaper and they're like, oh yeah, it's minimal interruption. You're like,
the standard for the PR department at the hospital is we're not turning away ambulances yet. You know what I mean? That's kind of the standard.
And it also appears that this hospital had a data breach about a year ago. Mm-hmm. And statistically, I think we talked in the green room about somebody that one of us had dealt with that was like, oh no, we're good. Change the password. We'll just move on. The reality is, if they're in your system once, you have like an 80% chance of something reoccurring happening not too far down the road. The bad guys will sell your access. Maybe they never got out in the first place. They just got a little money. Now they're going to lay low. And so it looks like they had a data breach back in December of 2023. Yep. And now they have this, which is in line with what we see in our profession. It's what we see all the time, is that they never really got them out of there. They just kind of looked the other way. And then the bad guys bide their time, and then boom, now they're back in here causing disruption again when they really need to get rooted out, and the system needs to be rebuilt from the ground up in a way that's more fireproof, if you will.
Anything else we want to add to these ransomware, this one, before we move on to the 2 that are happening to these major housing authorities? Nope. All good. Cool. So we got 2 other ransomware attacks to deal with, bigger ones. We have 2 housing authorities in separate parts of the country that are under attack. Kind of makes you wonder what's going on. Maybe there's a common thing here between these 2. They're running a similar web application that's exposed to the internet, like we talked about earlier. Who knows? But the Los Angeles County Housing Authority and the Houston Housing Authority have both confirmed ransomware attacks on their systems. The Los Angeles Housing Authority, this incident follows a previous attack in December of 2022, indicating a recurring vulnerability in their cybersecurity defenses. The Cactus ransomware gang has claimed responsibility for that attack, stating it has stolen 861 gigabytes from that organization. The Houston Housing Authority was also targeted by a ransomware attack, and the HHA was listed on a ransomware gang's leak site, suggesting that sensitive data may also have been compromised. This attack affects thousands of low-income residents who rely on the HHA for housing assistance. So these attacks, guys, highlight the vulnerability of public institutions, particularly those serving vulnerable populations. And disruptions to housing authority systems can have severe consequences for residents who depend on the services for housing assistance and other critical support. So what do you think is going on with these pretty well-funded organizations that are basically government proxies at the end of the day? What's going on here? Why can't they protect things better? And what are the data privacy concerns for this group of people that might use these services?
Well, they're definitely following the money. This agency, the Los Angeles agency, has a budget of more than $1 billion.
And,
yep, and provides 19,000 families assistance. It's going to be interesting if they have,
and it's other people's money too. So
Yep. And I mean, imagine you're the CEO, and in 2023 you had a breach, and a year later you have another breach.
And you still have your job.
And you still have your job. Yep.
Okay, he must call you Teflon.
Yeah. So that's just as we always say, unfortunate, because the people that's really going to suffer are these families not getting the services they need.
Yeah. Randy, any thoughts on this? Since Houston's in your neck of the woods, kind of.
It is, it's. I want to see why these are these related. That's what I want to know.
We'll find out in our follow-up segment.
And you're right. I mean, I don't want to give government agencies a bad name, but it is someone else's money. I'm just waiting to see what happens here, I guess.
Right. I mean, look, this runs the gamut from, number one, they got to do a better job of protecting this stuff. Privacy and security of the people who live in these facilities. People who I don't know what the HHA and who they serve, but I know in some states and some counties, these housing authorities, they can provide shelters for abused and battered women. And, those victims don't necessarily want their information being out there, or where they're living, where they're residing today, because too much can be done with that. There's just a lot of privacy and security concerns when something like this gets hacked, and then this information, could potentially end up on the dark web for somebody to just come along and find one day. Right, guys? So there's an absolute need for enhanced cybersecurity, better cybersecurity for these organizations as well. I could see a small town housing authority having a problem, but these are very well-funded city authorities, as Andre pointed out, what their revenues are. They really should do a better job. They have to do a better job. So let's talk about this Pathology Associates Medical Laboratories, another group that's dealing with a ransomware attack, guys, here this week. 4 big ones to go on with probably the hundreds that happened this week. But 4 hit the news, and the Medusa ransomware group, they've come a long way. They used to be a kind of here and there group that, they seem to be hitting somebody multiple times a week now. This attack affected 1.8 million individuals, making it one of the largest healthcare data breaches reported to federal regulators in 2024. The stolen data included sensitive personal and health information such as names, date of birth, social security numbers, and health insurance details, and medical test results. And I have a kind of a personal story to add around that, and I've been talking about what I have to add. quite a bit this year, but I just met somebody over the weekend where it happened to them. The breach occurred between September 21st and 22nd, 2024, but PAML only discovered it on September 28th. The Medusa gang wanted $5 million in crypto for the stolen data, but then later reduced it to $1 million. They refused to pay the ransom and instead focused on notifying affected individuals and offering them complimentary credit monitoring and identity theft protection services. The incident was reported to the Department of Health and Human Services, Offices for Civil Rights on November 1st, 2024. The ransomware group Medusa is known for its name and shame tactics, threatening to publish stolen data if ransom demands are not met.
Mm-hmm.
And this attack highlights the ongoing vulnerability of the healthcare sector to ransomware attacks, with the industry experiencing numerous high-profile incidents over the years. So, actually, two things happened in the last week that I kind of want to touch on around this stuff and why this stuff matters. I mean, first off, this Pathology Associates Medical Laboratories, they should take a look at what happened in Lehigh Valley Health Network when you're talking about not paying the cyber criminals. And look, I get it. You want to be noble. You want to do the right thing. You don't want to pay these guys. But when they're releasing nude photographs of your patients on the dark web, that results in a multi-million-dollar class action lawsuit that you have to go settle. $1 million seems like you're getting off cheap. And yes, you have no guarantee that they're not going to release that stuff. But Andre, Randy, and I come on this podcast and tell you all the time, like, hey, these guys actually hold their word most of the time. So one person in the last week, guys, that I know, it's actually in our MSP business, in our MSP industry, posted on Facebook that, hey, somebody set up somebody had enough information on him where they were able to initiate a transfer of money out of his account. And I told you that was going to start happening. Like, people's money was just going to start disappearing out of their account because people are going to have enough information on you where they can get the banks to go, yep. Okay, good. Yep, we'll move the money. And then another person that I know got their health insurance statement sent to them, and there were services for something in an emergency room at a hospital that wasn't him. And these are all the things that people are going to have to get in tune to and realize that this is what cyber criminals and what people are doing with your information. I mean, you're worried. I'm just going to go off on here a little bit. Like, everybody's worried about illegals coming over the border. But yeah, when you have illegals coming over the border and they're getting help from people on the dark web for things like money, health insurance, ways to make money. And I'm talking about scamming and stealing and other criminal activity that's facilitated by the dark web and people coming into this country illegally carrying out those crimes. It's happening. Like, I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist or anything, but it happened to me when the AT&T devices got stolen off my front porch. It's a organized criminal group that's tracking these devices going off on people's porches. They're being stolen and sold on Facebook Marketplace. Well, this information is being shared on the dark web, and people who are not from this country are the ones walking up to people's front porches and snagging this stuff and selling it. And this is how these people are surviving in this country and making money, because people are so goddamn addicted to these devices and shit. They're buying them on Facebook Marketplace to save $1 or $2.
Mm-hmm.
When you shouldn't be. You should be buying them from a legitimate place like your service provider. But that's what's happening. So, Randy, I'm going to let you let you go.
Oh, go ahead, Randy. Sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead. You go ahead, Andre. I'll go after you.
No, one thing also this article pointed out, so this happened or it was reported in October, and there's already 8 class action lawsuits on this.
Yeah.
Doesn't take them long, dude. I mean, we went over it last week in the green room when we went over that one lawyer's, what he does. I mean, they just put this stuff out. I told you I saw a Facebook ad for a class action lawsuit for a data breach. I mean, they file them and they get these things moving quickly now.
Mm-hmm. And no more even what was it, Uber or one of those companies where they were destroying the evidence of So now once they put that lawsuit in, they're getting notice. They need to hold all records and notes and all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I had a couple comments as well. So I'm pretty sure Medusa called out some company that wouldn't pay the ransom because the company wasn't following the FTC safeguards rule.
Yeah.
So we're like, you should be following that. You're a blah, blah, blah. And the other thing I wanted to point out about this incident, the click happened 6 months before the poop hit the fan, if you will. So there was a 6 month. Now they have the ability. We've seen it over the last few years where it probably they had to have 6 months, and we saw them get shorter and shorter and shorter. We can see them go from click to ransomware. What is the quickest we've seen? Like a couple of days. Like that's really being on the fast track. But the disturbing thing here is that they were in the system for 6 months, and 6 months to gather all the information, to learn all the way you do your processes in your business, the way you reach out to people, the way people communicate with each other, the slang you use, your company, your company culture. Like that's disturbing to me because if they put all their resources behind this, there's a lot of damage they could do. And I think the only saving grace in all of these attacks is there's so many attacks. There's so many access points that the criminals have. The criminals are overwhelmed to do a good job on every single one of them. That's my philosophy on this. But anyway.
All right. So let's put a nice little bow on everything we've talked about today, guys, and go wrap up with these kind of 3 articles that talk about those potentially web accessible logins that are being exploited left and right by cyber criminals. And there's just 3 in the news basically in the last couple of days that are related to that. Like you have things out on the internet, on the cloud, either cloud or devices that you have exposed in your own home network and you don't realize it, or in your office. And you might realize it or not realize it. I don't know. We run a lot of vulnerability and cybersecurity risk assessments, guys, and we have to tell companies a lot of times that they have something like a Synology NAS exposed to the internet, and they have no clue that it even exists, right? Or they know it exists, but they don't know it's exposed to the internet, right? We do that a lot, and I would think I pick on Synology NAS for 2 reasons. Number one, it is something that we find a lot because neophytes, people who are green, buy them, set them up because they're easy. And if they don't know what they're doing, they could expose it to the internet very easily. As we say, convenience doesn't usually coincide or play nicely with security, right? Convenience usually means they dumb down the security so it works for people and they're happy. When you put security in place, it usually makes it a little bit more difficult and not so easy. So we got the Synology NAS vulnerability, and we can dive into each one of these and kind of talk about the severity and if they're a real concern. This alert that came out about the potential privacy alert issued for 2.5 billion Gmail users and the potential that somebody could be reading your Gmail. Talk about that. And these TP-Link routers, the Chinese hackers have hijacked thousands of those. We're going to talk about why they would do something like that in this last segment here. So let's get into it, guys. these different vulnerabilities, which one makes the hair stand up on your back the most?
I like the Synology one.
Synology one's pretty bad.
Yeah, you got millions of Synology NAS devices, which are basically storage devices used at home.
I love the gap, 1 to 2 million. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 1 to 2 billion, no big deal. But it said billion, I know. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
But what I like about it is the way this was exploited was by a security researcher, and he was in Ireland doing a competition, so like a hacking competition. So just assuming that since this device has been out in the wild and the bad guys have known about this, and here he is in a hacking competition, sits in front of his computer, they hit the timer, and he's able to find us just like that.
Yep. Pretty amazing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
At least it was him and wasn't somebody else.
Well, who knows, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And this is known as a zero-click flaw, meaning you don't have to click on anything. You don't have to do anything. If your device is exposed, they can exploit it. So scary. What do you think about this Gmail, Mr. Gmail, Randy?
Well, I was going to say the one that gets me all ruffled up is the Chinese hackers and the TP link.
Okay.
Because that is a geopolitical move. You asked when you're introducing these articles, like, why would they want to do this? Well, they'd want to do this because if war breaks out between the US and China, like over Taiwan or something like that, rather than everybody just blowing off all their nukes and everybody dying, it's a lot better to keep it a psychological war. So if they have 100,000 TP-Link routers, they can spy on people. They could make them go down where their internet doesn't work. They could make weird stuff happen. There's a lot they could do from a psychological warfare standpoint to like lower morale or whatever. And so for me, that's the first time I read this article recently. It was in the last few days when I read this article for the first time. That's what I thought. It's a war move. We struggle against each other on the world stage. It's just them making a move. So.
Yes, sir. So Gmail's privacy concern came out because apparently Google treats all dotted versions of an email address as belonging to the same account. So if we use brian.horning@gmail.com and you send it to b.r.y.a. and you put a bunch of dots in between all the letters, I'm still going to get that email. So that led people to start thinking like, hey, can this be exploited somehow? And Google's come back and basically said no. It only applies to the part of the email address before the @ symbol, not after. And if we're not custom domains, it can only be done on the gmail.com. So if you have Google Workspace or a business, your own personal domain tied to Gmail, this doesn't apply to you either. So it seems like a big nothing burger. What do you guys think on this one?
It's one of those things you just need to know.
Right.
I think it's all about knowledge. Yes, there is a potential risk, but just remember, like, John.Smith is the same as John's.myth, but just Smith in the name is not the same. It's different. And apparently that's what they're kind of banking on with people not understanding how the dot works.
Right. People should know how this stuff works at the end of the day. It's splitting hairs at times, but that stuff can potentially lead to exploits down the road or people being tricked and scammed in ways that they're unaware of. So we like to bring it to people's attention. Anything else you guys want to add before we hit the end stream button here? All good to go. All right. Thanks for your inputs this week. Get out and vote. And we'll see everyone next week. Take care.
All right.
Bye, everybody.